Okay. So for anyone who is new to the call, so Jason Mears, Lindsay O'Donnell there with Florida Best Quote, our go-to insurance company here in Florida. So we have them here to talk, like get questions answered for anybody that has questions here. And then any input, anything you all want to bring up. I'm sure your phones, you've been like an operator back in the day. Your phones have just been blowing up lately. So
Yes, it's been a very hectic week. It's the worst possible Super Bowl I could ever imagine, and I don't ever want to experience one again. So I don't know where that adjuster was coming from. That's,
Right, flood.
oh goodness. Well, and here's the thing I'm just gonna jump into. I'm just gonna jump into it, I guess.
yeah,
Anyways, hi, I'm Lindsay with Florida Best Quote, and the first thing to just keep in mind with something like this, the carriers are having to pull in people from everywhere. So even my carriers that I've never had complaints on the companies that they contract with before, the tow truck companies for auto, things like that, they're having to pull people in from all over. The people they'd normally pull in might be going north and not coming here. So it's just kind of a tricky time where we've got to kind of bear with what we've got and work around it. And if there is an issue, reach out to the carrier and let them know so that they can handle it with that contractor. So
yeah, that's a good point. I talked to a lady yesterday. Her husband worked for a tow truck company, and she said that they have just been crazy busy. He's just been working nonstop, like whatever, like 18 hours a day. They have so many cars, like they don't even know what to do. And then I talked to a service technician at a car dealership. He's saying they're just balls to the wall, and like they're only giving them so much time to total these cars out. Like very short amount of time, and they're having to total all the cars out. They don't have any place to put the cars. All the rental cars are gone. So yeah,
yeah, it's all in all not a very great situation, not an ideal situation. Everything's kind of set up to work a certain way, and then when you have a disaster of this magnitude, a lot of it kind of goes out the window, and we realize our infrastructure just isn't set up for it the way we had hoped it was because it's never been tested like this. In this area of Florida, we've never been tested to this level. So, it things I think are going smoother than I expected when I first saw the devastation. But it is just kind of a process, and now is when we're going to really start to see. The other thing to keep in mind is, they're moving as fast as they can at the beginning to get out there and move cars, total cars, see homes, see things like that. And there could be a lot of turnaround during the claims process. Adjusters are going to get pulled out to different areas. They're going to have to, go up to North Carolina and help there, and once they can get in safely. And so you might have a lot of turnover on adjusters as well. So it's kind of going to be, we got to work around it. We just got to take deep breaths and then just communicate with the carriers, communicate with your agent if you come across an issue, and we'll all do the best we can to try and help out and
would you
find.
recommend having a public adjuster go out if the insurance company's adjuster is taking forever to go out, or having a public adjuster go out even if the insurance company's regular adjuster does go out?
So I would quite honestly recommend waiting until you get that first estimate from the insurance company before calling the public adjuster, because the public adjuster is going to take a percentage of your claim, so you're losing out on money that you're owed. If the insurance company is lowballing you and you don't feel like you're getting hurt and you don't feel like they're seeing everything and you don't feel like your adjuster is working with you, then that is the time to first go back to the carrier and try to mediate the issue and try to go back and say, I need more money. And then if that doesn't work out, that's where a public adjuster can really come in and help. But if you're going to get, $100,000 with minus your deductible and you need every dollar of that, the public adjuster is just going to take money off that, even if maybe they were going to get the same amount the insurance company would have given you. So you just don't know that the insurance company is going to lowball you until the insurance company actually does. So why lose money that's owed to you that you paid for before you know for a fact that there's a problem?
They take upwards of, Lindsay, like 20%, don't they? I know it's tiers depending on the dollar amount, below 50, above
Yeah,
50.
I meant to try and research that because I saw a post about it. I'm trying to keep up with all the social
Yeah.
media stuff going on as much as you
I
got.
looked, John. I mean, they do take a pretty large chunk. So, like she said, if they give you 80 and you think it's 100, chances are you're going to get 100, and they're going to take the 20 anyway. So you got to math it all out.
Right. And you can, I mean, you can get them once you get that first estimate from the insurance company if you don't agree with it. But the insurance companies do also have ways to mediate with them and work around it. We all saw that well, I actually didn't see it, I've heard about it, but the 60 Minutes episode about the carriers after Ian, who were changing adjusters' reports and lowballing what the insureds were owed. That's obviously a terrible situation that should not be happening. And the OIR immediately jumped in and started saying to the carriers that this is not okay and fixing the situation. So if you experience something like that, that's again something where, okay, now we've got to talk to the carrier, now we got to talk to the OIR, now we got to see what's going on. So definitely just, keep copies of everything and be your own best advocate as best you can and talk to your insurance agent if anything seems off. But I would give the insurance companies a chance to step up. Most of this damage is FEMA and flooding, and the NFIP policy, it is one standard policy if you're through the National Flood Insurance Program, and all the adjusters are following that same exact policy. So it's not like a situation where we've got a ton of wind and the homeowners companies all have different policy forms. So it should be pretty standard across the board what's being done by the adjusters. With the National Flood Insurance Program policy, since it is a government-run program, they're very strict on it. So again, it's just kind of a matter of we've just got to be our own best advocates and talk to someone first if you think that there's something that doesn't seem right.
Should they file a homeowner's insurance claim and a flood insurance claim?
So it's kind of up to you. It's really, we've just kind of been telling our clients it's up to you. So home insurance is not going to cover any damage that comes from rising waters. And I know I've seen that post going around that, like, if you call your home insurance company and tell them it's water, then they'll pay for the mold, and you got to be tricky with the way that you communicate things so that you get it paid out. Here's the thing, mold caused by flood is not going to be covered on homeowners. Homeowners policies specifically exclude flood damage unless you have a flood endorsement on there, which some carriers in Florida did start doing, but they stopped that process over the last couple of years after Ian, after Ada, after Idalia, and we started seeing more and more flooding claims here. They stopped offering the coverage on their homeowners. So those policies, there's not as many of them out there. And if you have it, you would likely know that you have a flood endorsement on your home policy. But if you have total devastation down on the beaches and you don't know, I don't know if wind knocked a tree into my window or if it was the storm surge that did it. Maybe I don't know for sure. It doesn't hurt to call your homeowner's carrier and file that claim. A hurricane loss does not impact you. It's an act of God loss. It does not impact your rates. Here's the thing that you hear about all the time after a storm happens, and we're just now going through it with Ian. When you
say that one more time, you said a hurricane claim does not affect your premiums.
It does not affect your eligibility down the road, and they cannot directly impact your rates from that. Now, a storm like this, I mean, overall, is it going to impact our rates? Probably not as much as you'd think on the homeowner side, because most of these losses are flood. So it's not the homeowners carriers that are getting a huge hit. And we did not see a big increase after Ian because Ian was mostly flooding losses. So that kind of saves our homeowners market as much as it was terrible and awful and devastating for the coast. It's not going to hit the home market as much because they're not having to pay out these massive losses like flood is. So you can file the claim on your homeowners, right? Remember, you've got your hurricane deductible that will come into play if there is any coverage they can find, and they'll have to come out and look at the rising waters versus whatever damage might be from the wind. If your roof was damaged, if anything else they can find coverage on, they'll see what they can find. There's two facets to that. One is your hurricane deductible is high, but it is an annual deductible. So if you file a claim now on your hurricane, let's say your hurricane deductible is $5,000 and you only have $2,000 of damage for hurricane, everything else is flood. Then if we have another storm come through this year, hopefully, knock on wood, we don't, then your hurricane deductible at the next storm would only be $3,000. So it can be beneficial to file even if your claims are small and they're under that deductible amount, just because it can cut into that deductible amount for you if we have another storm come through. Now, the thing to keep in mind, if you file the claim with your homeowner's insurance, once you open that claim, the claims department is made aware of the damage to your house, right? Now they know that there's existing damage in your home, and insurance companies do not cover existing damage. So what's going to happen is at some point down the road, the claims department, even if they didn't pay out a dime, even if they told you, sorry, none of that was hurricane damage, we're not going to cover this, some point down the road, they're going to ask for proof of repairs. From these major storms, we've seen that happen about 2 to 3 years later. So carriers are just starting to ask for proof of repairs from Hurricane Ian claims. So the biggest reason that you hear about people who've gone through massive storms like this before getting canceled or dropped for filing a hurricane claim is because they cannot provide proof of repairs. So here's my other biggest piece of advice. While the first bit of advice when you get this claim damage is document, document, document. Photos, video, keep pieces, keep as much as possible. Make lists, organize it all, get it all together, and keep all of that somewhere safe. Don't just keep it in your phone and forget about it. Create a folder somewhere, save it in the cloud. Then as you start doing the repairs and you get invoices and you pay invoices and you get estimates, save all of those documents together as well. This is a very traumatic time. It's hard to keep anything in our lives straight right now when you're going through your entire home. But I urge you, send it to us, send it to your insurance agent and say, can you just keep these for me? Forward the emails to them. Here's some repair estimates. Please save them in my file. Save them. I mean, of course, then keep that in mind if you change insurance companies at some point or insurance agents, but just save them somewhere. Send them to a family member who can put them in a Google Doc for you, because in 2 to 3 years, your carrier might come back asking for all of that proof. And
what about all the furniture that we see out in front of the houses, and beds, mattresses, coffee tables, all the stuff that got ruined? What if you want to take pictures of all that stuff, but ideally you would want to have an adjuster to come out to see all that stuff before it's taken away, right?
Yes. So we filed a lot of claims for our clients this past week, and anytime you file a claim, the first thing they say is do not discard anything. Hold on to it, take pictures. Of course, if the city's coming through and cleaning stuff up before the adjuster gets there, there's not a whole lot you can do. So really every item that's damaged should have a picture of it, a very clear picture. If it's an appliance, you should get a picture of the model and all of the information there. So you've got all that. Take pictures. Hopefully we all got some pictures before things were moved out of what everything looked like in our homes, but if not, just the pictures in the pile, clearly notate everything, take a clear video of it moving slowly. The more information you can give the adjuster, the better they can adjust your claim. The more information, even the tiniest things from your junk drawer that you've got to throw out, get those on the list. Get every little thing on the list that you can that is going to be filed, every piece of furniture. When you're taking the pictures of the water line in your house, find the highest point of water. Don't just pick a spot that's easy to take a picture of. Find where the highest area of water was. Maybe it's behind the dishwasher, maybe it's behind the refrigerator, but do that and get your measuring tape there and find the highest spot, so that way they pay off of that amount and not a lower level where water was.
Like John Jones, that's a great point that she brings up. When we were talking, you were like, well, some of your power tools, got ruined. Like I would never think to even put that in the claim. So basically everything you're saying.
Yeah, notate it all. Definitely make sure it's all documented. The adjuster is the one there to figure out what will get paid and what will not get covered. Here's one thing to kind of keep in mind, and I'm sure some of you may have already come across this, but if your house is built up because of the flood zone it's in, so if it had to be built to FEMA code, and so we've been built up over a garage or built up over a first floor, the thing that I think a lot of homeowners don't really understand through the process is that first floor is meant to allow for flooding to go through. It's meant to allow for water damage and storm surge to flow through the house without causing damage. When you see those pictures of the houses where that first floor, the walls are gone on that first floor, usually that's because those walls were actually built to do that. They're called breakaway walls. They're meant to allow the water to go through so that the storm surge does not damage the overall structure itself, and hopefully it doesn't get up to the second floor. What does that mean in the claims process? FEMA asks you to build up like that because they don't want that first floor to be finished, because that first floor is meant to allow water. So what happens is the house is built to code. 10, 15, 20 years later, someone buys the house and they turn it into a game room. They turn it into an extra kitchen, a mother-in-law suite on the first floor, an extra bedroom, finish the flooring, finish the walls, throw a bunch of furniture down there. And now we're finding out, or they're finding out the hard way that FEMA's not going to cover that. They're not going to cover payout for losses in that area.
Thank you for bringing that up, because my neighbor told me that because he was over on a house that was built on stilts, but they finished off like the lower level. And he's like, yeah, they're not going to cover that. And I'm like, that can't be right. It is right.
Right. They'll cover to an unfinished level. So like if you had a garage, they'll cover to an unfinished level, unfinished walls, things like that to get it back to garage level, but they will not cover flooring, paneling, things that were if you added a bathroom down there, things like that. And it's just
Thank you.
because that was meant to allow water flow. That's the whole purpose of building the house up like that is to allow the water to move under it freely. So the policies are not meant to pay out on that.
Can you touch on then, so house isn't built up. My buddy's house on Madeira Beach, his house is not built up. It's flooded now 3 times in the last year. Can you touch on the FEMA 50% rule?
So, okay, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not a complete expert on the FEMA 50% rule. Every community and city is different on it and how they handle it and how they calculate it. So here's the biggest thing. So the FEMA 50% rule that says that if a house is substantially damaged or substantially improved to a point where the repairs or the improvements are more than 50% of the current market value of the structure. So you go to the tax appraiser site, you look up what the market value is of the structure. And I know I've looked it up down in Fort Myers after Ian. I had some clients go through this. And every community has it. Pinellas County has one created. It's a very specific form that shows, what they're looking at and how they're calculating it. They all have their own determination for how far back they go on those permits to cumulatively bring them together and determine what 50% or what that total cost is and where your market value is. So the market value is going to be based on what their county appraiser says, or I believe you can bring in your own appraiser to try and determine the market value. But again, confirm that with your community. And so if you have to submit permits for repairs in this situation and with the substantial damage, when you have to submit those permits, if those cumulatively come to 50% of that market value, then they're going to tell you that you have to build up the house to 50% build up the house to current FEMA codes, which
So
usually
like on the Pinellas County property appraiser, like Lindsay's saying, you go there, you put in the property information, you pull up that actual property card, and on the right-hand side, there's a tools or a tools button. You click on that, and then it's going to say FEMA. You click on that, and on my buddy's house, it might be worth like $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. If he sold it, the value on the structure, it's only like 1,200 square feet. It's old. It's $142,000. So he only gets 71,000 to improve it. Even though his flood insurance, he's paying for higher dwelling coverage than that on his flood insurance. He can't get that full amount. He can only get the 71 grand. Or if he wants the full amount, he has to elevate the house.
was
Correct?
he told by the adjuster he can't get that amount?
He can get the amount. He just couldn't rebuild, Sean.
Yeah. So he can get the amount, he can get the payout. And I think I actually just had someone yesterday say that one of our insureds was saying they were only going to get like 120,000. And I'm like, they have 250,000 on their house. Why are they saying that? And they were saying something, and that must be it. So people are saying, okay, so the NFIP will still pay you the money. They'll still pay you out the amount of money. What you have to actually permit for repairs in these situations does not all necessarily have to be permitted. So like I think, and they just posted some things that they're even waiving right now for repairs on stuff. As far as I know and what I've seen, because we've had people have total losses in flood zones before, and they've not come out and been like, you have to rebuild your house up to code. It's all depending on the actual permits that are filed and how the city calculates it. So like I think I just saw something where like some flooring stuff and certain things being done right now, you don't even have to get a permit on. So if you're not getting those permits for certain repairs, you can still make them. You can still get that claim check. It's just a matter of when you're working with your contractor to do the repairs, there might be some funny numbers that have to be done to figure out how to keep the permitting under that 50%. So my biggest thing would be there's so much to worry about right now. There's so much to stress about right now. Talk to a contractor, one that you trust when it comes time to start rebuilding, and just let's not panic about this thing that we haven't come across just yet. Get the money from the adjuster, get the money to fix your house, and then we'll kind of work through it and see how they're responding to it and how they're handling it. Because it's up to the community, the city and the county to implement this. It's not FEMA implementing this requirement.
Okay. Yeah. And you bring up a good point about like a contractor, and make sure you're using a contractor that has done like flood mitigation with seawater. Because I had referred somebody to a client of mine, a contractor that I know, and he's done water mitigation before, but he had never done ocean water or seawater, salt water. So I guess the process is a little bit different with how they remedy the situation for seawater compared to what I guess regular water. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more contamination with the seawater, and especially the seawater that came in, there's a lot of sewage involved in it as well. So it's very different than just having like a pipe burst in your home and clean water running through it. There's a lot more to worry about. It really is a massively important to make sure you're working with people who know what they're doing on the remediation side and on the actual repair side. FEMA requires a few things in order for them to pay out. First of all of your unsalvageable, all of your porous materials that are wet have to come out of the house and be removed, and everything that is remaining behind and can be salvaged must be cleaned and sterilized before you can start the drying process. So, I mean, I think I saw one post on Facebook in a community group where a woman had some people come in. She cleaned her house out and left her or vinyl flooring in, and they had fans going in there to try and dry it out before they pulled the flooring out. Then they finally pulled the flooring out and realized she still had an inch of water under them. FEMA will not cover for those initial fans that were in there before that happened. They also require a drying log. So they need whoever you're working with who's doing the drying, they want a drying log. I believe it's for at least 72 hours. I can confirm that here in a second. And they want someone to go out and check on it every day to make sure it's being dried out properly. So there are certain steps that your remediation company or contractor has to go through to meet FEMA guidelines and requirements to make sure everything that they're doing is covered. And sometimes there's things that they offer that aren't covered. So you just have to be careful with that. And that's why it really is best to try and wait until you talk to your adjuster first. Obviously, in this case, it was a matter of, we had to move fast and get things out. So it's not working in a perfect world scenario. But just make sure you're working with reputable people, make sure they've got a license, make sure they're insured, make sure they've been in business for more than a year. A lot of people come and follow storms and chase them and just start going door to door. So we got to watch out for that.
Do they need to let their homeowner, if they don't file a homeowner insurance claim, do they need to let their homeowner's insurance agent know what happened, or just not bring it up?
No, it's not really necessary. You don't have to call. I mean, usually your homeowner's agent is the same as your flood agent, so we already
A lot
know
of times.
flood claim. Yeah. And it's just, the homeowner's claim, people keep saying like there's certain things like, is this covered? Is this not covered? And really, we cannot say yes or no. I cannot tell you that you won't have coverage from your home insurance carrier because that's only an adjuster can do that. And that's how the adjuster reads your policy form, your specific policy form to find coverage. So
have you ever heard of this? So my friend had texted me over, he found a hazard mitigation grant program. It says where FEMA covers 75% of the cost of elevating a home and the homeowner is responsible for remaining costs. This program is only available after a president declares a disaster. It says this program is available and annually applies to communities with approved hazard plans. Properties must be insured through the NFIP. This program includes property elevations as eligible project type. To qualify for these programs, homeowners must apply through their local community, meet all eligibility, and have a project approval before construction can start. Have you ever heard of that?
yes, it's been around, and we've seen it previously. In the past, it's been very difficult to get. There's a lot of hoops to go through, a lot of steps to follow, a lot of red tape in the way. I don't know if things might be easier now that we're in this situation. But I kind of think even as I'm saying that out loud, it's probably going to be more difficult. But I've seen some clients try and go through that and get the funds and get the grant from FEMA for building up. And I just know the feedback I heard was that it was just a lot of steps, a lot of things a lot of requirements you had to meet, and a lot of red tape to get through the process and to qualify and just have it available for you.
So like if he lives in Madeira Beach or somebody lives in Clearwater Beach, St. Pete Beach, so do they call like the city of Madeira? Because my friend was saying he didn't think he could actually apply. He had to apply through the local community. So does he call like City of Madeira Building Department, like city of, or somebody lives in St. Pete? What do you do? Who would you call?
I believe it was the city and county that you would communicate with that they're handling that through. I don't think that one's through FEMA, but there might be other ones through FEMA that you would contact. But if you, even reaching out to disasterassistance.gov and reaching out to FEMA, they can help point you in the direction of a lot of things. But if you Google that or call your city building department, they can let you know what that is. But I'm pretty sure, because it's been a while since I had people talking about it. It was either after Ada, it might have been after Ada. The first time we actually had flooding several years ago from a tropical storm going up the coast. There were people trying to build up. The other thing to know is that you do have on your NFIP, if you have an NFIP flood insurance policy, there is $30,000 of increased cost of compliance coverage, ICC coverage. That is available to help build your house up. Obviously, that's not going to go very far if you have to, lift the house, but it is available.
In addition to the dwelling coverage?
Not in addition. If you've reached 250,000 max, then there's no ICC coverage. That limit's been met. But if you got paid out, $150,000, then you can apply for that $30,000 on top of it. Or if you got paid out $180,000, then you could get 20,000 of ICC coverage. For the ICC coverage, you do have to communicate with the city or community, and you have to get a letter from them saying that you have experienced substantial damage and that you do qualify as a substantial damage home. And then there are more steps you have to jump through and hoops you have to jump through to get that claim filed as well. I actually was working with a client trying to get that done after Ian. He was rebuilding his house from the ground up, and he obviously, his house was a big house on the beach. There was not enough money from FEMA to rebuild, so he was just trying to get anything he could. And I think he ended up getting the 250 payout from them, so he couldn't qualify for the ICC anymore.
So what if they had like on my friend's policy, he has 182,000 for his dwelling coverage on his flood. It wasn't 250. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's 182. So could he get the 182 plus another 30,000 then potentially?
Yeah, if he's building up, if he has to prove that he's building up and bringing it up to code.
Okay, we have one question here. It says, who would cover the sewer line breaking under a home?
If there's sewage or sewage backup from the flood, then that's flood insurance. So everything, it's all proximate clause. Whatever causes the loss is the policy that will cover it. If flooding caused the sewage backup into your home, then it's going to go under the flood insurance policy. If it was caused by wind, and I don't even know what kind of situation would, but if it somehow fell under hurricane damage, wind damage, not storm surge or flooding damage, then that would be the homeowner's policy.
So what happens for people that need to move out of their house? They have a mortgage payment. They have, we want them to continue to make their mortgage payment, obviously, even while they're rebuilding it. And they need to go get an Airbnb property or like a short-term rental or a 6-month rental or a year rental. So like, is there anything in the flood policy that would cover, because a lot of people can't afford 2 house payments, like a renting and their mortgage.
Right. So unfortunately, flood is a really terrible product. It's a really terrible product. It's a really terrible policy. It was not built to make you whole. So your home insurance policy is built to make you whole. Your flood insurance policy was built by the government. Back in the 70s, home insurance carriers realized that a loss of this magnitude, a flooding event of this magnitude, they can't rate for. They couldn't figure out how to even prepare for and keep policyholders premium on hand for to be able to cover losses or reinsurance for it. So they just said, we can't cover this. We got to take flood off our policies. So the government stepped up. That's when they built the NFIP, and that's when they built the flood policy. And the idea behind it was not to make a person whole after a loss. It was to try and mitigate the need for government assistance after the loss. So it's not a great policy. That's why it's limited at 250,000. And yes, we can get excess flood, but we've had so many flooding losses lately that a lot of the carriers have stopped offering excess flood on the barrier islands. So you couldn't even get excess coverage. The policy does not include loss of use coverage, unfortunately. So there's
John Barnes, are servicers proactively calling in these areas and offering forbearance plans on the mortgage for 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, in the event that they can't live in the home and they have to get another place?
No, a borrower is going to have to reach out and engage on that conversation. And even then, it might take some pushing. The good ones, they'll work with you when you engage, but definitely if there's an experienced loss where they can't live in the home and potentially there's some income disparage that's happening there as well, have them reach out to their servicer.
And on a case-by-case basis, they could, kind of like when COVID happened,
Yep.
Okay. So,
And this is also just real quick that this is where disasterassistance.gov is huge. This is where FEMA does step in and help out in this situation. So if you have to get new housing, if you have to move, even if you have flood insurance, you can still apply for disasterassistance.gov. They'll help cover costs above and beyond what your flood company will not, or your flood insurance will not. So apply fast. Get in there, talk to them, and let them know that you need to get housing elsewhere, and they'll help you. I know that they're finding places to put people up. They're helping to, provide some money to help people get back on their feet in these situations. So just now is the time in a situation like this to reach out to all avenues possible. And if you know someone that's truly struggling and not gonna be able to make ends meet right now, not gonna be able to figure this out, they should be doing insurance if they have it, FEMA assistance, and then looking into the local charities. Local charities are collecting a ton of money to help people out, and coming here in the next couple weeks is when it's time to just start reaching out and asking for help and funds where available. A lot of the local churches have online things. If you just start searching where you can apply, let them know that you need housing, let them know that you need money for food, whatever it is that you need, help with repairing your home, and they'll get you connected with people who can help you.
okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that.
Let me see. Hold on. I've got a whole list of questions that I forgot to pull those up.
I know this isn't your all's wheelhouse because you're insurance, but I know quite a few people that are out there that had no insurance because their houses were free and clear. I mean, are they just out of luck? Like, it's just so sad.
FEMA assistance is what they're going to have to go apply for. And they might, in those situations where they don't have flood insurance, I've seen in the past where we've had clients, and I don't know if FEMA truly required it. I believe they did, but I didn't talk to FEMA directly on this. But a lot of them came to us and said, I need to file a home insurance claim, even though I don't have any flood coverage, because I need to get the denial from my home insurance to show FEMA that I don't have any money coming in. So FEMA can cover, but they're not allowed to duplicate if you're getting it from insurance. So if you're getting money from insurance, they can't pay any of that money to you. They have to know for sure what you're getting from insurance and then look at anything outside of that amount. And then if you don't have insurance, obviously they're going to start from zero.
And how fair is that people that are aren't paying for flood insurance get a flood payout where
Well, I think it's considered a loan when they do it that way, right? Like they have to pay it back.
It can be. I don't know that it is in every situation because I've also never really, they always say that, and that's what they taught us to say when we were telling people you should buy flood insurance instead of going with the government assistance. But I've never known someone specifically that so far, I will now, that's had it. So I don't know if it's a loan for everybody or if it's just for some people or how they do it. But I believe a lot of the wording I've seen has been grants, and grants usually are not paid back. So I think they've got a couple different programs, and some might be grants and some might be loans, depending. But it is, even if you do have the flood insurance, if they're only going to pay you, $100,000 and you didn't have contents coverage or you didn't have enough contents coverage, they'll cover the contents portion for you and they'll help you out there. So they will come in and pay over what your insurance is going to give you. Overall, insurance is obviously more, well, it's not a great product. It's still more of the guarantee of this is what you're paying for, this is what you're going to get. And then FEMA hopefully will have the funds to be able to cover everybody and keep that going. That's.
What's your advice to somebody like my friend in Madeira Beach who now has owned the home for 4 years, didn't have any issues for the first 3 years. The last 1 year, he's had 3 different floods. What do you tell somebody like that? He's asking, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, do I fix it again and hope for the best? Do I, tear the house down and rebuild it? Because he did everything, like he had put he tried to hurricane proof, flood proof the home, with the exception of his hurricane doors were actually got delivered on Wednesday.
Oh gosh.
The day prior to the storm coming through. So that was the last thing that he didn't do yet. But I don't even know if that would have made a difference because he said the water came up 4 feet in his house.
Yeah, I don't think these storms are going to stop. They've just gotten worse and worse. I was here for so long and we'd never seen flooding. And everybody who's been here 50 years, their whole lives, have never seen this. These storms that are going up the coast like that, they just keep pushing so much water up. Really the single story homes are just, they're not built to withstand this. They're not built to keep up with that. We didn't start with NFIP building codes until 1975. So all of our older homes that were built in the area weren't built up. And I can tell you that a lot of my clients who were on the coast in these areas, you know, their houses behaved as expected. The water stayed in the first floor and it didn't damage the second floor. If they hadn't finished it, then they didn't experience as much of a loss. So building up, if you're going to stay on the coast and if it's feasible, is really, I mean, that would be the best recommendation to avoid it happening again. I do think we're sadly going to see a lot of investments coming in, a lot of people coming in where there are homeowners who can't afford to do that. Those houses, it's already starting. Those houses are going to get torn down and they're going to get rebuilt up, and they're going to get built up higher to meet flood codes. And that's what we're just going to start seeing is we're not going to have those small beachfront communities with those small bungalows that we all knew and loved and we're used to seeing. It's either that or you rebuild, go through it all, and if you do, you're now, if you've got those 3 losses in a year, he's going to become a severe repetitive loss property. He's not going to be a severe repetitive loss property. So a couple of things on the flood insurance. So homeowners insurance cannot drop you or specifically increase your rates directly for an act of God claim. Flood insurance is a little different. So flood has 2 things. Previously, it was just a severe repetitive loss property, which a severe repetitive loss property, and I don't know this, I tried to memorize it multiple times. I'm just not that good. But if I had it right in front of me, I'd read it off. But it's like if you've got 3 claims in a certain amount of time totaling at least $3,000 or 2 claims totaling at least $20,000 or or something like that. There's 3 different levels that you can be at. And once you hit those, you become a severe repetitive loss property. So pretty much anyone who flooded during Ada and flooded during Debbie or flooded during Adalia and now flooded is probably going to fall into that severe repetitive loss property category. And those are they're going to get a letter from if they've got an NFIP carrier, they're going to get a letter saying you're likely an NFIP or severe repetitive loss property. We've sent this information over to FEMA. They're going to review it. And if they determine you are, then your renewal notice is going to come from the NFIP direct. So a lot of policies are written through a write your own carrier, which just means another company like Progressive or State Farm is able to offer an NFIP flood policy using their flood form. But FEMA Direct, they offer their own policy that you write directly through them. And when it is a severe repetitive loss property, they're the ones who rate for that. So the rates are significantly higher in there. So that's one area. You'll probably end up there. So you're paying more in flood insurance. Until you can show that you've built your house up and remediated it above the flood code. Otherwise, what we have now is our prior claim surcharge with the NFIP, and that just started with risk rating 2.0. And that basically means that if you file, this is your first claim since April of 2023. If you file another claim after this on your flood insurance, you'll now get the prior losses surcharge added. And so far, we haven't had that. We haven't even seen that yet. We have no idea what those rates are going to look like. They could add thousands to the premium. They could add hundreds. I would assume it's probably the higher amount, but it's just going to add an increased premium there. So it's going to be tough to stay in a 1-story house on the beach for a lot longer if these storms keep up. That would be what I'd say.
Sean, for your buddy doesn't qualify for a grant unless it's a primary residence. Just FYI on that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he lives in Oldsmar and he has the beach house in Madeira.
Yeah, they most things are limited to primary residences with FEMA assistance and everything like that.
Jeez.
A couple other things just while I'm talking bad news, I guess. And a lot of you have
Come on now, be nice to us.
I know, I'm trying. Just along the lines of that, you know, the flood policy not being a great product. Doesn't feel good to sell it in a situation like this, I can tell you that. They don't cover anything outside your dwelling. Pools, pool pumps, spas, docks, decks, things like that. They don't cover a lot outside of the house to help you with that. So just kind of be prepared for that.
Found that out.
Yeah. Let's see, what other questions did I have?
The other thing, Lindsay, if you can touch on like the, when you start listing your items, let's say you have 100,000 in contents, you've got to go well north of that. really dive in. Don't just stop at 100, because they're going to depreciate based on the year purchased, and give you next to nothing on most of those items.
So that's another
Right. I mean, let's be honest, like a lot of us, you're going to go, you're not going to get for a living room set that's 8-10 years old, right? You're not going to get, it doesn't replace the couch. Basically, you're going to get $75 for the sofa set. Good luck.
Right. So on the NFIP policy, the dwelling is insured at replacement cost if it's your primary residence, and if you're insured to at least 80% of the replacement value, or 250,000. So both of those have to be met for you to be at replacement cost on your dwelling. Otherwise, it's automatically actual cash value or depreciated value on the dwelling. And then contents is only covered at actual cash value if you're through the NFIP. Private market carriers, some of them did offer an endorsement to add replacement cost on those, but on the beaches, there really just wasn't a whole lot of private market coverage available. So most people are with the NFIP. And yeah, so it's a depreciated value. So definitely, don't calculate everything. That's why I say go through your junk drawer, find everything you can. There's usually a bottom where they have to go with the depreciation. On homeowners, I know it's usually 30%. I don't know for sure if flood has that they give to their adjusters. So they're not going to go to zero, but once it gets to 5, 6, 7 years old, you might get down to that 30% level. So definitely every single thing that is damaged, document, have it listed, have it shown, have photos, have information.
So like if you have like the $10,000 couch from Annabelle's Fine Furniture compared to $1,500 couch at American Signature Furniture, like how do you even? I mean, like I would,
They're gonna look at the couch. They're gonna find out where you got it from, find out what you paid for it. And the adjusters are pretty good at this part of it. They'll go in and they'll bring spreadsheets and the information and talk through it with you. Where'd you buy it from? Do you remember? What year did you get it? They'll look it up if they have to. And they're gonna look at, it was $5,000 when you bought it 5 years ago. We're gonna depreciate this much off of it. We'll give you, $2,000 for it.
You need gap insurance on your couch, Sean, if you're upside down on it.
Lesson is shop at Rooms to Go. I mean, we need disposable furniture.
At Rooms to Go, if you trade it in, right, they'll build it all into the loan. You'll be good. The next couch will be 16, 18,000, Sean. Everybody rides today.
Oh my gosh.
I read on a website that
another question, Lindsay, let me ask you a question. So this is directly related to somebody on this call that's leaning in right now. So I have coverage of 250, 100. And the adjuster was out here. I've already cut out most of the drywall. This weekend I'll have it all done, kitchen cabinets and everything. You're telling me that if I get a contractor that I should get, with all receipts, I should have coverage to put it back together, correct?
Yes.
Would you wait till the insurance adjuster comes out to do that?
Yeah. I'm just saying, like when she said that if you had the 250 or the 80%, essentially like I'll be covered, because I guess that's my panic, right? Not having gone through this, like let's say I get a contractor, which I've talked to a couple. They give me an estimate and then FEMA turns back or they just tell me, no, that's too high. We're only going to cover 75% of that amount.
Did the adjuster give you an idea of how long it would be before he'd be back with an estimate?
Couple of weeks. He was going to send us some forms to start listing everything. And he did tell us, he said, go north of what you think your stuff's worth. Don't stop at 100. He's going. Like, otherwise,
Okay. Did he tell you about the advanced payment option?
He said that, he processed like 5,000 for like contents and 7,500 or something just to, get us started. I mean, I'm doing the work, so.
Yeah. And so basically, just so everyone knows, you can request an advance payment from the NFIP, from your adjuster, but if they didn't offer it to you up front, you got to just call them and ask for it. And they'll give you anywhere from usually like $5,000 to $15,000 or $20,000, depending on the loss and the situation, just to help in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then as far as like doing stuff yourself, FEMA pays out based on the so when they calculate the labor for that to pay you back on it for any, they're going to look at and make sure everything that you did follows what they would want it to. Like I said, the getting everything out, the proper drying, all of that. But they'll pay you out based on the average
Cost. Yeah,
wage,
the average
the
rate.
average
Yeah.
wage, minimum wage for the area. Sorry, thank you. Is how they'll calculate that to help pay a homeowner who's doing things themselves. So they're not going to like say just because you did it yourself, we're not going to pay that. You definitely want to kind of get the contractor lined up. I would just make sure it's a contractor who's used to working with them and knows what they're going to be looking for. And it would be a matter of, until you get that estimate from the insurance, you don't know exactly how much they're going to pay. So it is a little tough, but
All right. So next question, like obviously everything like behind your shower and tub enclosures, water was everywhere. What do you do with that? That's cement board back there. I know that, but I mean, at that point, are you ripping that stuff out, or what do you guys recommend?
I haven't had that question yet. That one might have to go through
I
a
mean, it's going to turn to mold. You know what I mean? It all
yeah.
it all gets saturated. The cement board is much hardier, right? That'll last. It's not going to corrode like drywall. It's designed to get moisture, but not saturated. And none of us know what's back there. Like whether it actually got behind. Yeah, I'm just curious what I can save or what has to truly get chopped out.
Yeah, I
And
mean
it
that,
is overwhelming because there's a lot of drywall, by the way, folks, in your house. I mean,
yeah,
you start going hallways, right, into closet spaces, garages, the entire, basically, there's a lot of drywall.
yeah, yeah.
It's a mess to live through. I can tell you that. It's
I'm
unsettling
really,
to go
really
through.
sorry you're going through it. I'm really
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I mean, we're okay. I mean, we're in good spirits, but yeah, just because you don't prep for it, right? You don't have bins, you don't have anywhere to put the stuff that you take your whole entertainment center that was ruined and everything else that's salvageable, right? You've got to figure out quickly what you're going to do with it. There's no bins, there's no plan for any of that salvageable stuff. Everything else gets carted out and trashed, right? And now stuff's just laying about, in a dust bowl.
Yeah, it's
Shit show. That's what it is, Lindsay.
literal. Yeah, I mean, and no one, we'd never seen it. We never expected it. You think it's just, yeah, it's been a mess. It's going to be a learning process for everybody. Lots going to probably change, a lot of stuff. But all we can do is take it step by step, day by day right now and
I
see.
mean, we were
Yes.
blessed. I mean, for everybody on this call here in Florida, we were blessed that we didn't take a direct hit, right? Tallahassee, it seems to have weathered it. Thankfully, like when I drive around, what's great is the whole area outside of a flood zone is okay, right? We're not like what Fort Myers went through with a direct hit with the high winds and affecting our whole city. People have asked and said, what is it going to impact us real estate wise? I think it's going to be great for us. I really do. I think you're going to see, like you said, Lindsay, investors popping into the market. There's going to be sellers that want to get out, right? But this is like for me, I looked like in my neighborhood, we live in Harbor Hills and they're all one level primarily still, right? There's some 2 and 3 levels, but I might decide to get out of this property and it's an opportunity for somebody with a lot of money that wants the dirt, right, to come in at a good value and buy some of these properties and do what they really need to be done, which is ultimately raised up out of the flood area for all of us in the future because it's not getting better. Like Sean, your buddy, I mean, he's 3 times in a year. That's a disaster, dude.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, those Shore
that's
Acres,
horrible.
I mean, they've just been, we had a client who wanted to buy in Shore Acres and the house had already flooded 3 times when he went to buy it. And he was like, well, I'm just going to have all my furniture up on lifts and do this and that. And I was just like, why are you buying this house?
I know.
Yeah, his end goal was to lift it up. Now, here's the other thing to keep in mind, especially for loan originators. Don't forget that with risk rating 2.0 and our new rates, even when these houses get built up, you're not going to see better flood insurance premiums. If you're on the coast, on the barrier islands, even if that house is built up over the base flood elevation, we're still seeing $6,000-$7,000 annual premiums for flood insurance, some upwards of $10,000. So,
And
All right.
it's more expensive as a vacation home over a primary residence too, right?
non-primary rate is higher for the NFIP, but not that much anymore. It's not as bad as it used to be with the new risk rate.
So go back on that. That's a good So like I decide I want to just tear my house down and elevate it, right? Rebuild it. You're telling me my flood insurance is still going to exist and at a high rate.
Yeah, so here's the thing that I would say, and it's got to be very carefully navigated because once you lose a flood insurance policy, so and it depends. So if you currently have the rates in place that were in place before 2021 on flood insurance, then
I'm capped at 18%, right?
grandfathered in, right?
Yeah.
So even during, you have to be very careful with how you navigate it because you don't want to let that policy lapse. If that policy lapsed during the demolition or rebuilding phase without coverage, you have to get a new policy written using the
Full
last
value.
rates, to try and keep that rating factor in. And if for some reason we can't renew, it's just there's a lot of things that can happen that could then result in those higher premiums. We had some people go through it and it did not pan out. The construction took too long. They ended up losing the grandfathering rate and had to pay the new premium. So it'd be a very careful procedure to try and keep the risk rating, the old rating in place without having a lapse, or without having to get rewritten to a new policy when you do
So-
build.
So like let's rewind 10, 15 years. When people built up, right, they would often say, hey, I built up specifically to eliminate or minimize flood insurance. You're telling me they've been grandfathered, so it's slowly going up for them as well now.
Mhm.
And eventually it's going to be at so there is no saving yourself going high.
No. I mean, if you're grandfathered, and you can manage to keep that rate in effect, which is, like I said, it's going to be tricky, and there's a lot of things that have to fall into place perfectly for that to happen because some of the rules with new ground up construction and FEMA get a little dicey. And if you go past a year of under construction coverage, it can get tough. You gotta meet a lot of deadlines. So it's just something to be really conscious of, or aware of, sorry. But if you, I lost my track, my train.
I mean, an 18% increase anyway, even grandfather, it's going to double in 4 years, your policy.
Yeah, but it will take more time than immediately jumping up.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, because some of these, we had some people who were building before these rates went into effect, and before the rates went into effect, it was going to be $600 a year for flood insurance based on their elevation. After the rates went into effect, it was $6,000.
So I think that's important, guys. Like, I mean, I was under the impression my neighbor specifically wants to build up and elevate so he can eliminate flood insurance. So you're saying that's not the case for them.
No, you cannot eliminate.
He's got misinformation, even if he puts it all on pilings.
The
right?
only way to
with them.
the
What's
only
that?
move your flood insurance requirement is if you build the land under your house up. So you have to build the actual dirt under your home up and out of the flood, which is not possible on the barrier islands. Inland zones, you can do that. You can bring in fill dirt and build the ground up.
Yeah.
So basically, if the ground's up and what your house sits, then your ground is out of the flood zone. So
Everything's protected foundation wise. Yeah.
Right. But if you're just building up on stilts, you're still in that flood zone. Those stilts are just meant to allow the water to flood underneath your house.
Well, this was a real gut punch, Lindsay.
Sorry.
I'm looking for like best case options here, not like, oh, I had a 2-year plan. I had a 2-year plan to get my youngest out of high school and off to college and
oh.
So if you do have to build up, John, it's my understanding there's some design features. Say you don't do it on pilings, but it's enclosed cinder block, but it's non-livable quarters, of course, still. But I have friends who had new homes and they put a design feature in, like little breather holes, and it cut their flood insurance in half. So if you are rebuilding up, make sure that your contract, it's almost like having hurricane straps can give you discounts on your wind. Certain design features can give you additional discounts on your flood, from my understanding. So, but this has to be done during construction and take note.
Yeah, those are flood vents, and that's a good point. And that's basically building it to code to again allow the water to move through. So it can result in discounts, and it used to result in significant discounts. It's just not the same anymore if you're close, because basically now they're rating based on your distance to coast and your type of flooding source. So when you're near the coast and you've got the storm surge coming through, I mean, when I heard 5 to 6 to 7 feet, I thought to myself, okay, so it won't be that high, and there'll just be some water rising slowly, and so everybody will just have some water in there like they did for Idalia, and it will be okay. We'll be okay. But that's not what it was. With storm surge like that, you've got wave action. You've literally got the ocean flying into your house and destroying everything in its path and moving houses off a foundation. So now they're actually taking that part into account, that you're not just getting, calm little water rising up from a stream or something like that. You're getting the ocean coming through your house. So those rates are just higher with the new risk rating 2.0, no matter how high up you are, no matter how elevated your house is or how many flood vents you have, unfortunately. But
That cash
now
offer
we
I
see
got
why.
yesterday was pretty good.
What?
I said my neighbor gave me a good cash offer yesterday. I'm about to text him. So is this called insider trading right now, guys? I need this recording destroyed.
As is.
So do you think the flood maps will change like now? Like did areas that weren't in flood zones get affected significantly as well, or not so much?
Not as bad. I haven't really looked at the numbers from like Tampa and areas of St. Pete that aren't flood zones, but I think really they kind of worked out the way that they are. I mean, it was mostly the evacuation zones A, which those
I
are all
think so.
zones that got flooded. It's all the low-lying areas. So, I mean, they might come through. They just redid all our flood zones a few years ago. They might come through and do them again, just as these storms keep kind of getting worse, it seems. But there's no guarantee, and it's the government, so they kind of run slow with everything. It'd be at the next time they review the NFIP program. And it's also going to depend on how in the hole they end up after this. Last I looked at it, they were 21 billion in debt. Who knows what they're going to look like after this? So, we'll see.
And then cars that got flooded, that's automatic, an auto insurance claim, right? Even if they were in the garage
Yeah,
of the
that's on
home,
your auto insurance.
still auto. Okay.
And they're mostly, from what we've heard, just totaling it out if the seawater.
Oh, my
Do you have to
neighbor.
have separate auto flood coverage like you would for renter's policy? A renter's policy need to have separate renter's flood policy?
You have to have comprehensive coverage. So for anyone who said, I don't want any coverage on my car because it's not worth anything, if you don't have comprehensive coverage, you don't have flood coverage. But if you do, you've got flood coverage.
Okay.
There's always people out there ready to take advantage. Remember the old "We Buy Ugly House" signs? I was seeing on St. Pete Beach yesterday, "We buy flooded cars." So the flooded cars are going to be hitting the market. Clean them up,
they'll
make sure there's no.
They're scrapping them for parts, right? I mean, you're going to get
Well, that I'm sure they are. They're buying them for a song.
Yeah.
Just metal.
Yeah, I just want to say one quick thing. I'm kind of thinking forward. One of the big things how this is going to impact a lot of us is y'all and us, is we're seeing so many people that just didn't have enough coverage, or they got a flood policy and they didn't, they wanted to save money, so they didn't have contents coverage. Or you've got people that increase their hurricane deductible to 5% or 10%, but they don't have that money in the bank to cover that, or they didn't include replacement cost on their contents, or and I know y'all deal with that too. With you have your debt to income standards, and then insurance has got to be a certain amount, so people lower their coverages or they increase their deductibles. This feels like a watershed moment in some ways, right? Like we're going to be pointing back to this storm, going, no, you really need contents coverage on your flood policy. Think twice about raising your hurricane deductible, because if you don't have that money sitting in the bank, you don't have hurricane coverage, right? So a lot of those things that, and again, we've talked about this before, but not telling clients, you're not in a flood zone, you don't need flood insurance. We don't want to be telling people that, especially you've got people that have flooded that have never flooded before, and maybe they had somebody tell them they didn't need it, right? So a lot of wording needs to change, but we're just going to be facing a lot more. Think twice about increasing those deductibles or lowering that, not including replacement cost or not including contents on flood policy. I think all of us are going to be affected by this, and we really have to take major steps to try to really encourage people to not cut coverages.
So Jason, like if in North Carolina, what are they impacted? What's the coverage there with the mudslides? Like 18, 20 inches of rain hits up on the mountain. What coverages? Is it just homeowners covers that?
Well, it would be part of the home insurance unless it was flooding, then they would have to have flood insurance.
If the rain causes, it all depends on what actually causes the mudslide. And I was looking through the handbook all week, and I didn't pay as much attention to those details because it didn't impact us. But from what I read quickly, if it was the rain accumulation that caused the mudslide, then flood covers the mudslide.
And so none of them had flood coverage. There's not a single one that's in a mountain, 1,200 feet elevated that nobody's probably got flood.
We'll have to see how that all works out. It's going to probably be a lot of FEMA assistance, but it's going to depend on how the carriers, how
Well,
they read it.
It's good FEMA's backed by the federal government because they'll just keep printing paper, keep raising the debt ceiling. No
Research
big
on that.
deal.
I'll do
No
more
biggie.
on that.
But I did read something on
As opposed to what's our alternative? Just tell everybody like go to hell?
No,
I mean,
no, I think they should. They print paper for everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way we've operated.
Cut those checks.
Two other eye openers, and you might, I'm sorry I was late, so you might have covered this, but first of all, people on first floor condos, their HO6 policy is not going to cover their contents because they needed a flood interior policy. So there's going to be a lot of people waking up.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that.
That they unknowingly,
you can't get renter's insurance,
they
right?
unknowingly did not have coverage for this flood, even though they had an HO6 policy.
Right.
So they're all about to get bad news. The other thing is, 20 years ago, the standard homeowners insurance didn't have law and ordinance. And so people that had complete losses and had to build back new to code were coming out of pocket, some people 6 figures on a normal house. So we're started to see a while back that was 25% law and ordinance was a standard part of your normal homeowners policy, but not part of your flood policy. So if people have 51% destruction and FEMA forces them to destroy their house down to the slab, and even probably have to get rid of the slab and rebuild, even with their flood insurance, they didn't have law and ordinance to build back to code. They just had standard replacement cost estimate coverage, and they're in for a big surprise.
Yeah, it's tough. Like we were talking about, the flood insurance is not, it's not a policy meant to make you whole. So you got that 30,000 ICC coverage. That's about it. And then on the for condos, you guys all know, interior of the unit, we need the dwelling coverage. The association carries that policy. So everything built in is covered. But if you don't have a separate flood contents policy, then it's not. You can purchase just a contents policy, contents only. It can get pretty expensive on the beaches. If you're on the first floor, we quote them, might be like $800 for 20,000 of coverage. And a lot of people might choose not to take that. Now they might change their minds, but in the past it seemed too expensive. And then for renters, you can also purchase contents only flood insurance. But again, renters are used to paying $180 for renters insurance for the year. So to ask them to pay $800, $600 for a contents flood before this last week, it seemed too much. So I think that maybe we just all have to change our perspectives on insurance and the cost that it has, and that it is valuable, a valuable expense when you need it.
Yeah, I never even would have thought to bring that up.
Most people don't realize, and they're going to find out when they submit a claim, that they didn't have the right coverage. And of course, as lenders, we're not in a position to, advise. But when I was an insurance agent in the 80s, I used to say, the big print giveth and the small print taketh away.
Yep. That's, wow. Yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's always good to see you.
Thank you.
So much for having us. If you have any other questions, let us know. You can reach out to us at Florida Best Quote.
Enjoy your Super Bowl.
Oh gosh, no, I don't want it. I don't like this.
Me neither.
Yeah. We're going to have even more forms now in our disclosures.
Yep. All right. Bye, guys.
I got it.
Thank you.